and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vicini. We're powered by CLNS Radio, and today's sponsors are the two most valuable apps that you can have during the NCAA Tournament. You need seats to games, and you need somewhere to place bets. MyBookie and SeatGeek are going to have you covered there. Today on the show, we have my current colleague at Sporting News, Mike DeCourcy, one of the legends of college basketball writing. How is it going, Mike?
I'm very well, Sam. How are you today?
Oh, it is a lovely day again in California. I went through like this month-long crazy spell of rainy weather and like cold, and I mean cold for LA is like 40 degrees, but like it was miserable, and like for the last week we've been pretty good though, so I can't complain.
That's good to hear. It's actually we're getting a little taste of winter here in Indianapolis now after having had basically California weather for most of January and February.
Oh boy. Well, are you going to be in Indianapolis for the first round games, I guess? What are you looking forward to there?
Well, in criticizing the committee for little things here and there and zinging them about the fact that they keep really pounding Kentucky with difficult brackets year after year after year, or bad seeds or whatever, I forgot to mention the fact that they really hooked me up, Sam. I mean, they took care of me big time because I obviously am going to be here in Indianapolis, stay at home, no hotel costs, et cetera, et cetera. And so who did they give me? They gave me maybe the most dynamic, exciting first-round game of all with Michigan and Oklahoma State. The number 5 overall offense in efficiency, Michigan, against the number 1 offense in Oak State. So that should be very fascinating to watch. And Louisville and Kentucky are here, and the Dayton-Wichita State game, how competitive is that? How exciting to get a chance to see that. So couldn't be better there. And then next week, I'm already booked for Memphis, and there's the chance we'll have Carolina, UCLA, and Kentucky down there. So I could not have asked for a better bracket for my purposes.
Man, the committee and the NCAA tournament, or really just the NCAA, loaded you up this year. That is fantastic.
They really did. It's all about me, Sam. That's what you have to remember.
You kind of mentioned that the committee continues to kind of screw over Kentucky with its seeding, and I totally agree with you. Just look at what Kentucky's going to have to go through this year. They're going to have either Wichita State or Dayton, followed by UCLA, followed by North Carolina, and I wanted to talk to you about your general thoughts on seeding. I know that you went to the analytics summit, like the quote-unquote analytics summit, I guess, with Kevin Paga and Ken Pomeroy and all of the smart people that do these metrics that come out, the RPI, the Ken Pom, KPI, Sagarin was there. Like, there is a lot.
Don't leave out BPI, because I think you get fined if you leave it out. So don't leave that out.
We'll not leave out the BPI. I believe that's Ben Alomar, right?
Yes, Ben. I really enjoyed getting a chance to meet Ben. Very nice gentleman. But the BPI thing, it does get to be a bit much.
It does. But I wanted to get your feelings on that, because I know that for a long time you've been kind of against, and I don't want to say against necessarily. I won't put words in your mouth, but you've been critical in some ways of using these metrics for inclusion in the NCAA tournament. So I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on the summit in general, and then just what went into, what went into the mess that was the seeding in this NCAA tournament.
Well, I think first of all, one of the things that I've always maintained is my philosophy on this is that it takes 6 one-point victories to win an NCAA championship, and that's my philosophy regarding metrics like Sagarin and Ken Pom's ratings. Now, first of all, I need to mention that I was among the first people, I might have been the very first, but I was certainly among the first, to notice what Ken was doing and to publicize it to a wide audience, in particular with the beginning of his statistical breakdowns, which was the offensive and defensive efficiency. I went bonkers for that because because what it did was it made me. It underscored a lot of what I've always had been theorizing, that offense was really, really important, and that coaches talk defense all the time, but that offense was way more important than they were letting on. And Ken proved that with those rankings. And then as he's gone deeper and deeper into other factors, some of the turnover percentages and things like that you find. I mean, I think it costs like $15 a year to do his site, and it's just phenomenal what you get for that money. And so from that standpoint, I think he's phenomenal, and I'm a huge fan. But I've never been a ratings guy in that sense. And if you're a gambler or whatever, or you want to use it to pick your bracket because you think there's some value in that, that's fine. But in terms of, is somebody really better because they got the 2 Ken Pom ranking than the team that has the 12 Ken Pom ranking? I'm not really sold on that. So that's where, I sort of separated with some of the people in regards to the computer ratings. And what I found very interesting, maybe the single most revealing moment of the whole analytics summit. We were there for 4, 5, 6 hours. I can't remember exactly how long it lasted. But Ken was the one who said, I don't think, more or less, I don't think that you should use ratings like mine to pick the teams. What he was saying is that he believes that the teams should get in based on winning and losing, so to speak. And that it's not about, to him, it shouldn't be about how many points you win by to get into the tournament. And I thought that was really, really interesting. I'm paraphrasing him in that regard, and I'm comfortable doing that, but he basically said that he believed that predictive metrics were not necessarily the way to go. What the coaches who sort of spurred the analytics summit had in mind, what their proposal was, to sort of mash everything together, mash together the predictive analytics and the one-loss based metrics, and try to come up with some sort of composite ranking that would give them a better number than what is currently the RPI. Ben was among the people who, Ben Alamar of ESPN was among the people who said that in trying to work out something like that, they found out that it really didn't tell you what you think it tells you, that the math is bad. Now, I don't know math well enough to know whether he's right. If he says he's right, right? I have no training at that level to dispute that. But the other, Ken and Jeff Sagarin, seemed to concur with that they didn't feel like mashing them together gave you a good number. So I don't know where they'll go next on all that, whether they'll just power forward with some sort of hybrid number, or whether they'll do something else. Andy Glockner, formerly of ESPN and Sports Illustrated, and author of Chasing Perfection, which is a basketball analytics book, suggested, and I think there's some merit to this, that the teams should be selected based on one-loss based metrics or performance or whatever. That should be like, you should get in if you're Kansas, which I don't know what their Ken Pom numbers are, but they're a team that's 28-4, beating good people, but rarely by a lot of points, and always in a white knuckle game. That team is 28-4, and they've beaten good people, so that's what counts. And if the metrics aren't as good for them in terms of margin of victory and that sort of thing, okay, they're still 28-4, and they still want a tough league and have great wins. And then once you get into, you have a field of 68, then use more performance-based metrics to seed the teams. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a merit to that, because you're not really sticking it to anybody and leaving them out by going on the old one-loss record kind of deal and quality wins, et cetera, et cetera. And then once you get in the field, then look at what's behind some of those records and go by strength a little bit more, so that you have a chance to match teams more fairly.
I think that ultimately that's where I fall as well. I'm okay with selection being based off of what you did in terms of wins and losses, but whenever you are trying to seed an NCAA tournament, I think it's relatively unfair, and not just to the teams that are getting seeded, but to the teams around the teams that are getting seeded, to not include margin of victory, because I think a perfect example of that is Wichita State this year. Wichita State has beaten everybody since the calendar turned to January, essentially, by 1 billion points. And It seems like they were unfairly maligned a little bit for losing Fred VanVleet, Ron Baker, and Evan Wessel, and taking some time to figure out exactly what their team is good at and exactly what, how they were going to play. The problem for them is that they play in the Missouri Valley, so their early games are their only chance to really accrue quality wins. So the fact that they took some time to get going in their season, it really hurt them in terms of resume. So I kind of think we need to start including, margin of victory and team quality in terms of seeding, because otherwise you're just going to get these wonky things where we create a situation like we mentioned at the top where Kentucky, they have the worst draw I think I've seen in a long time in terms of the NCAA tournament.
Well, actually, for Kentucky, it's only the worst since 2014. That's how bad it's been for them. But I think one of the things that I've argued, and I think that would certainly straighten some things out, what you're suggesting. But one of the things that I've pointed out over the years, Sam, and I've been basically shouting into a vast abyss, is that if you examine one of the things that I think the committee could really stand to do. And this may not make everybody happy, but what they could do, and this would be pretty easy, you want to use some numbers? Go back and see what wins in the NCAA tournament. And I can tell you just based on some, on a lot of years of observing and periodically revisiting these numbers, one of the things that really works that the committee absolutely refuses to acknowledge is dominance. Mm-hmm. Like Wichita State. They've won by 1 billion points, so they've got Ken Palm's ratings really happy. But even teams that don't win by 1 billion points and get high computer ratings, but win every time out, like Stephen F. Austin a year ago, or 3 years ago, mm-hmm. In one of the poorest leagues in Division I basketball, and getting seeded deep into the field, 13s and 14s, and they're still winning games. Why is that? Because they're really good. Because what people don't understand about college basketball, they think, well, if you just start letting teams in that have great records, everybody will go 30-4. Try it sometime. See how good you have to be able to go on the road in any league in Division I and win almost all your games or all your games.
Yeah.
It's really hard, so you look over the landscape of Division I teams and see how few teams go 17-1 in their league or 18-0 or whatever. It happens almost never. And so if you I did some math on this last week, and if you look at teams that are 6 games over 500 or less that get in as at-large teams, 7 of the 10 this decade prior to this season were eliminated in the first round. Now, just last year, and a lot of those teams, nearly all of them were seeded either 9 or 10, mm-hmm. A few 11s and 12s in there, but almost all of them were seeded higher than the teams I'll put in the next category, teams that entered the NCAA tournament last season with winning percentages of better than 80, that were seeded in double figures. That there were 5 of them last season, and 3 of them won first-round games. Stephen F. Austin, Hawaii, and Little Rock all won first-round games, so they all had to beat 5 seeds or higher, and yet they still won. And yet we keep keeping out teams like Illinois State that meet that standard in very good leagues, not leagues having a very good season necessarily, the Missouri Valley, but a very good league traditionally, and we left them out because we don't look at that number and say there's something in there. That 80. I wrote a column probably 2009 or 2010, and I termed it the 801 Club. For whatever reason, teams that get in at exactly 80%, I think that translates to around 24-8 or 25-8. I can't remember exactly. But those teams don't do as well. But once you get over 80, mm-hmm. those teams really start to churn, and they win in the tournament. And they're the ones that you're like, how does Northern Iowa beat Kansas?
Yeah.
There they are. Won 30 games. It's not an accident.
Yeah, winning games, it's funny to think about this. Winning games actually helps you whenever it comes down to the NCAA tournament.
It's an amazing thing, isn't it?
Let's move on to some of the games that you're excited for in the first round. What games are you looking forward to most? I guess we can start in Indianapolis because you're going to be there for Dayton, Wichita State, Michigan, Oklahoma State. Then we can kind of expand out.
Yeah, those are obviously because I'm going to get a chance to be courtside, those are the two that for me are most compelling. I think that, first of all, that Michigan-Oklahoma State game, I watched. I was there in D.C. for the final 3 days of the Big Ten tournament, and really enjoyed watching Michigan play. That's a team. The plane crash and everybody getting out okay, and it became a story. And people, I was in the restroom on Sunday morning or Saturday. I think it must have been Saturday, and I heard someone say "Team of Destiny," and it was like, oh, please don't start that. I mean, it's not that. They're good. I mean, they did not get a very good seed, and that may affect where they go. I mean, obviously they have to play Louisville in the second game, and that's not going to go great for them necessarily. But they're really good right now. I mean, they've won either 9 of 11 or 10 of 12, and one of the losses was the Northwestern game at the buzzer with the long pass. I mean, they've been really playing great basketball. They started to defend, and so that's going to be the interesting thing for me. Is Oak State hasn't started to defend. They haven't even gotten to the D yet, let alone the EF, EN, SE. They're not even close. So will Michigan be able to dictate the game because they're actually trying to guard, or will Oklahoma State's offense, which is the number one in the nation, be so powerful that Michigan's efforts don't matter? It's certainly possible. That's the way the game could go.
Mm-hmm. And then Wichita State and Dayton, what do you like about that game beyond it being the really just the elite coaches bowl, I guess, in terms of mid-major quality with Greg Marshall and Archie Miller?
Yeah, winner gets the next big open job, right? No, not the. I think both of those guys have great prospects.
Winner stays in Indiana.
I'm not saying anything like that. But they both have great potential to move on if they like. And Greg is going to be very selective because Wichita has taken such great care of him. And I talked to Arch, 3 years ago, I think, and even at that point he realized that was right in the middle of the Elite Eight run, and even at that point he realized he had a really good situation. It was going to take a very good situation for him to leave Dayton, and he's had opportunities and been patient. So two great coaches and two terrific teams. I wonder about, did it help Dayton to get woken up a little bit in the A-10 tournament? But I think Wichita's better. I mean, I like Scoochie Smith a lot, and Pollard. I think he's terrific. But I think Wichita has a real gear there. It's going to be a terrific game, and I wouldn't be shocked by either team winning. But I think Wichita's going to move forward.
What are a couple of the other games that you're looking forward to just to watch on TV?
Well, I'm curious about the Wilmington-Virginia matchup because Wilmington, again, a great offensive team, very well coached by Kevin Keats, and playing against Virginia, a team that down the stretch did not play great basketball. They had moments, certainly. They just destroyed Carolina when Carolina came into their arena. But Virginia did not quite have. They certainly got a little better at the very end because they started playing Kyle Guy again. Yeah. And I was sitting there when they were struggling to score, and I'm like, "Is he hurt? Why is he not out there?" I know they wanted to get Kyle playing the way he's supposed to play at the defensive end to get him out there, but I knew that once they put him back in the rotation that they would score better, and it certainly happened. But Wilmington, that's a trendy pick. I picked Wilmington to go to the Sweet 16 in part because I don't think that either Florida or Virginia has great potential to make me look bad by making a Final Four or championship game run. I'm really very interested to see what happens with Notre Dame and Princeton, because Princeton has won, I think, 18 consecutive Ivy League games. And what's interesting about playing Notre Dame is you're playing all high major guys. I mean, everybody on Notre Dame is a big-time ACC player, but nobody on Notre Dame is like physically overwhelming. They aren't physically overwhelming from the perimeter in terms of like a a 6'5" wing that can take you down and just bury you with his athleticism, and they're not overwhelming in the post from a height standpoint. Certainly, Bonzie Colson is overwhelming from his skill. But does that bring them into Princeton's range a little bit? I think that's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, the key for me in that game is VJ Beacham, because he is kind of the guy who can athletically just dominate Princeton if he wants to. But I mean, the key with him is, he hasn't done that for 4 years now. So we'll see what happens with him. I mean, he's the guy that they need to go for like 20 points in that game.
Yeah, he really struggled in the Duke game in the ACC championship. Really did not have one of his better performances.
Yeah, the game I'm looking forward to is Iowa State in Nevada, because those two teams both play small. They're both really, really athletic. They have shooters all over the floor. And plus the point guard matchup, Monte Morris versus Marcus Marshall, will be really fun. Monte Morris, I don't think enough people realize, and I'm sorry for sneezing mid-podcast, but I don't think enough people realize just how good he has been, especially over the course of the last 2 months.
Yeah, I have to, year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I ranked the top 10 point guards, I guess, coming into the 2015-16 season, did not include Monty, and got just reamed by Iowa State fans. And having watched him on television, he doesn't always play with a lot of burst. He doesn't always go by people. He doesn't always attack. He's very careful about the way he plays. So I kind of thought he didn't have it. And then I went to see him play in person against Cincinnati, and he was outstanding last December, I think it was. And it really changed my mind about what he's capable of and how he plays. And I thought he was much more aggressive this season with no Niang. I think he began to take his responsibility as a creator more seriously, and he did so, and he was effective without really increasing his turnover total. He continued to be really one of the most efficient guards. Efficient can be a little bit overrated in basketball. It's one of the favorite words now, but sometimes, Allen Iverson wasn't very efficient, but he was a pain in the butt to opponents. And Monte, I think, has started to realize that sometimes, you have to take a chance a little bit, and I think he's been an even more effective player down the stretch of this season than he was even a year ago when I was proven so wrong.
I saw a hilarious stat with Monte Morris. It's like he could turn the ball over 53 straight times without an assist in the NCAA tournament and still break the all-time assist-to-turnover ratio in, the NCAA's history. He is just outrageous. He has 200 assists to 35 turnovers. As a guy who, actually has the ball in his hands all the time and is creating shots, I'm with you. I didn't really get it when he was a sophomore, but I think an underrated part of his development has been getting Steve Prohm there. And I know that, Fred Hoiberg's an incredible basketball coach, but Steve Prohm, if you look back at his history in terms of developing guards, you've got Isaiah Cannon, you've got Cameron Payne at Murray State.
Yep.
Yeah, and now you have Monte Morris. He just understands how to get through to these guys, how to develop them, and how to really get them to the place where they can not only attack and shoot and score, but they're also just incredible distributors.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. I think Steve's done a really good job. And, Steve is now in the club of coaches who, at one point in their careers, everybody, or a large, loud segment of their fan base wanted to fire. And the good news for him is that club includes Jay Wright, who just won the championship, and Jamie Dixon. And I did a column about it a year ago. Sean Miller, when he was at Xavier, I did a column about a year ago and listed 10 guys that are among the best in the business right now that at one point their fan bases wanted to fire. And Steve joined that club this year when they were going through a tough spot in January, early February, but they closed with a Big 12 tournament championship.
Yep. Before I let you go, Mike, I got to get your opinion on title contenders here. Who do you think are, let's say, I think that you would probably agree with me. There are maybe 8 to 10 teams that can realistically win the NCAA tournament. But who are your 5 that you look at that really have the best chance?
Well, I think the 5 would certainly be Duke, Carolina, Kansas, Gonzaga, and probably. See, I can't limit it to 5 because then I got to go Arizona and Kentucky. I think I got to go to 6. Because if I leave Kentucky out of there, I'm going to feel they would be the 6th, I would imagine. because I still don't trust. I trust their core, but I don't trust the whole. Mm-hmm. I love De'Aaron Fox, and especially now that he's healthy again. I think you saw in the SEC tournament what he does to opponents. I think Malik Monk had the most underrated season of any college basketball player this season, because he should have probably been on more first-team All-America teams, given what he had to do to keep that team where it is. You know, with Fox hurt, first of all, they're very dependent on him to score anytime. But then when Fox went down, it was even more so. I mean, they need to get 47 out of him to beat Carolina by 3. He gives them 47. They need to get 30 and a half out of him to beat Florida at home. They get it. I mean, that kind of performance is vastly underrated. So I really like what he's done, and so I would not want to exclude them, but they do have a fragility about them that is disconcerting.
Yeah, they're very dependent on their backcourt. I would like to see more out of Bam Adebayo, and he seems to have really turned it on over the course of the last month, and that's great. I think he's averaging like 15 and 10 over his last 7 games, which is really important to their hopes. You didn't mention Villanova in that top 5 or 6, so where do you fall on the Wildcats?
I think, and I've come to this conclusion over the past month or so, that core. Now you'd go back and you'd have to throw in Arcidiacono and Echefu from last year, but that core of players, Jenkins and Hart and Brunson and Reynolds and Bridges, that core of players, I think, is the most competitively tough group of players that I've seen in college basketball in the last 20 years. They don't ever leave a game without making sure you knew they were there, and that you were in a fight. And of course, they've won an incredible number of games, and consecutive Big East championships, and an NCAA championship, and who knows what they still will accomplish this year. But in the end, they're really small, and they're much smaller than they were a year ago.
Yeah.
They still have a dynamism, but they also, they're not as deep as they were a year ago. I mean, a year ago they put Phil Booth out in the championship game. He got him 25, and now Phil Booth is absent because of the injury, and of course Arch is gone and Ochefu's gone, and so I just think that they've done a great job of covering up for what's not there right now. But the NCAA tournament has a way of revealing what's not there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's entirely fair. I have Villanova going to the title game because I like teams that are crazy switchable, that can shoot threes but are also efficient inside. They kind of fit that to a T, but I totally agree with you. I think there are like 8 to 10 teams that could win it, and if you told me Villanova went out in the Elite Eight or whatever to Duke, I would not be surprised by any means. Before I let you go, last question here. Who is your title pick going into the tournament?
I picked North Carolina, and if they had... and I'm not saying they're soft. They're not. But they're a little bit competitively fragile. I mean, and you saw that on Friday night in the ACC Tournament Championship game when they were kicking their rivals' tails for 30 minutes, and then they got a couple of bad breaks, including the 4th foul to Joel Berry, and then it went it completely dissolved. And it reminded me a little of them kind of capitulating on the Monday night prior, or two Mondays prior to that against Virginia on the road. And so I worry a little bit about that. But they are the most complete team that we have, or the closest thing. And they do have big-time players at the point and on the wing in Barry and Justin Jackson. And they do have, 3 big guys they can rotate through. I wish they still had Kenny Williams because he gave them an extra guy to throw out and use as a defensive stopper, but they still have Theo Pinson.
Yeah.
So I think overall there's a lot there, and I don't trust that pick that much, but no matter who I picked. I mean, if I picked Arizona or I picked Duke or whoever, I would feel squeamish about it because that's the nature of this season.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you there. I think that I will mention with North Carolina, like Joel Berry is just so incredibly important to them. When he got that 4th foul against Duke on Friday night, I mean, they just went into a tailspin. And part of that is the mental toughness that you talk about, but another part of it is like they just need him to get in and out of their offense in a way that is pretty scary going forward.
Yes, I mean, it's not like they don't have anybody else to throw out there. If they didn't, I wouldn't worry about it as much. I mean, Nate Britt's a good player. I mean, he starts, or has started a lot of nights, and he's been a point guard on occasion when Barry was not there, and so it's not like they don't have anybody else to put out there. So if they had no Nate Britt to back up Barry, I might not feel as worried about how they respond to adversity. But when you do have that, you should be able to fight through it.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point, especially with Nate Britt being a senior. Mike, tell the people where they can find your work. I think that they're probably already following you, but let's go ahead and get a quick plug.
Yeah, it's on Twitter. It's at TSN Mike, and everything that I write is tweeted out there. And people will tell you that I'm one of the more active journalists in terms of responding to viewer insights or complaints. So TSN Mike, and then also I have a Facebook page. Mike, it's Mike DeCourcy is my author page, and a lot of stuff gets put up there as well.
Yeah, go follow Mike on all of his social media platforms. Are you doing any TV, any video this week?
I will have some video on sportingnews.com. Absolutely, we're going to work on that this afternoon, and so I'll have some stuff up for that. And then Big Ten Network. I think my season's finished unless Purdue or Michigan or Wisconsin gets on a roll and makes it to the Final Four. But every winter you can find me on set at the Big Ten Network, and we do our Sunday evening show during January and February called Big Ten Basketball and Beyond.
Go check out Mike on all of those platforms. We will be back in a minute. We're going to talk to Nick Fasulo about some betting in the NCAA tournament. But thanks to Mike for coming on. Before we get to Nick giving us some gambling tips, I have to tell you about our two sponsors. The first one is MyBookie. It is time to talk about the boatload of money you can make this week betting at mybookie.ag. If you haven't checked them out, this is the perfect time to get into the action. The madness of March is here. Lay down some money and score big on college hoops. Join me and thousands of online players and start betting at mybookie.ag. I would only recommend a service that's been good to me and our listeners. That's why I urge you to make your way to MyBookie. You win, they pay, fast and without any hassles. They even have in-game live betting, so you can place a bet after tip-off. You are wasting your time anywhere else, and if you join now, MyBookie will match your first deposit with a 50% bonus. That's right. If you join with, say, $100, they will give you an extra $50 to play with for free. Use the promo code THEORY, THEORY, to activate that offer. Visit MyBookie today or call 844-900-BETS, BETS. Play, win, and get paid with MyBookie. We are also sponsored by SeatGeek. The college basketball season and NCAA tournament are about to get into full swing, and SeatGeek is the smartest, easiest way to get tickets to your favorite team's games. With SeatGeek's seamless mobile experience, you can buy and sell tickets in just 2 taps. SeatGeek helps you find the best seats at the best prices, fully guaranteed. There is nothing like being in the stadium for the biggest plays of the year, and SeatGeek will get you closer to the action for a great value. I have the SeatGeek app on my phone. It is by far the easiest way I have found to shop for tickets. I can be anywhere, and with just a few taps, I can instantly find seats. I actually use SeatGeek out here to go to concerts occasionally. I'll do comedy shows. I will do hockey games. It is just a fantastic use of my time. And best of all, my listeners get a $20 rebate on their first SeatGeek purchase. To get your $20 rebate on tickets, download the SeatGeek app, go to the settings tab, and click add a promo code. Enter the promo code GAMETHEORY, GAMETHEORY, without a space. SeatGeek will send you $20 after you've made your first ticket purchase. Again, that's download the SeatGeek app and enter the promo code GAMETHEORY today. All right, we are here with Nick Fasulo from over at SB Nation. I got to tell you, man, I have been pumped to see you churning out some video content over there this week. You're over at their New York offices. You live in San Francisco. I know that you're just making some time for me because you're trying to get out of New York. How is it going, buddy?
It's going well, man. I got to say, I subscribe to about 8 podcasts that I listen to and from work every day. And you were one of those 8, so it's really nice to be brought onto the podcast. You do great stuff. I'm really excited.
Yeah, I am so appreciative that you say that, first and foremost. It's always crazy to me that people actually listen to me. But, like I said, I really appreciate it. And I have brought you on because I know that, like me, you like to get down and gamble a little bit on the college basketball action. What are some of your strategies that you employ whenever you're gambling on college basketball?
Yeah, I think first off, I'm not hemorrhaging money, throwing tons of money at these games, but I do think it's fun because it forces you to pay attention to things, and especially during the regular season, that can get a little bit laborious watching these games every night. Having a little wager will help me pick up on things that will help me, in March when I'm making these picks. So it allows me to play closer attention. And I also think it's just fun to have those conversations with your friends, too. Just saying who's going to win or lose can get boring after a while, but when you play the lines, play the over-unders, it's an added dimension, and it just makes it a lot more fun, to talk shit with your friends and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, one thing that you mentioned to me is that you're a big second half fan, betting the second half. If you see like a trend that, this game has kind of gone under so far, I would assume that it's going to kind of go over in the second half. Like Wake Forest, Kansas State was a perfect example of that last night, I thought, where it was like 76 points in the first half. It was actually on pace to go over. But if you just watched those two teams, you knew that an offensive explosion was coming. And like if you just pounded that second half over, you definitely made a pretty decent amount of money.
Yeah, absolutely, and it did happen, and I tend to do that a lot, and I found it to be interesting that those initial full game over-unders seem to be pretty accurate, right? Mm-hmm. So if a game is off pace after the first half, especially if you're watching it, you can pick up on a few things. You got to look at that second half line because it may be skewed a little bit one way or another. I think especially for the NCAA tournament, some of these teams may come out a little flat and nervous and not playing up to what they're normally used to doing, especially on the offensive end. So I think some of these games in the tournament could start out slow, way off pace, and then you can hammer those second half overs. But it's something you definitely got to monitor. It's not something you can really pick and choose before the game starts. Mm-hmm. You got to be paying attention to that game and then wait for the line to come out and make your pick.
Yeah, no, I'm with Nick on that one. Let's move into what the bulk of our podcast is going to be today. We're going to pick the first round games, essentially, against the spread. We're going to say, do we like this? Do we think it's a stay away? What our opinion is in terms of what we'll be gambling on, essentially, in the coming days. But first, I do want to caution here. I have been on a relatively cold streak. I want to point that out to everyone listening that I have been on what I would call a rather obscene cold streak recently. During conference tournament season up until the Saturday night of conference tournament season, I think I probably lost 75% of my bets that week. Like it was the coldest streak I think I've ever gone on in my entire life. So how are you rolling right now, Nick?
I'm doing okay. I'm probably going to have a few friends listening to this that want to chime in and say they've been doing terribly as well. But I've definitely, like you said, I've had some great streaks over the past few years. Look, at the end of the day, Vegas usually wins, right? I mean, so we're all here suckers for this. But, yes, I've had some good streaks, and I do see some lines that I really like, and I think I'm feeling more confident about myself heading into this tournament. Let's just leave it at that.
What I'm going to mention here, before we get started, I don't really want to talk a ton about the 116s and 215s. Are there any 116 games or 215 games that you like?
There are not. Basically because I just don't – it's hard for me to say, okay, is this team going to win by 30 or more points? I mean, that's such a large amount of points that have to be scored. And, yeah, it happens all the time, but it's hard to just mentally see that game playing out like that. So I have a very tough time with incredibly large spreads like that, so I usually stay away from those types of games.
Yeah. We're going to go in order of the start times for these games here. At 12:15 on Thursday, Notre Dame faces Princeton. Do you like that line? It is Notre Dame -7.
-7, I would stay away from this. I'm not quite sure. I mean, Princeton is very efficient. I like what they do, but I think they got a bad matchup in Notre Dame. I do think a lot of threes are going to be shot in this game, though. So when I look at the over-under of 134, I'm thinking that with all those threes taken, you do the math, I would lean towards taking the over on that. Stay away from the line of 7, because I think Notre Dame's going to win, but Princeton may be able to keep it close. But I think there's going to be a lot of long shots in that game.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point because Notre Dame, not necessarily the fastest team, but they're willing to kind of get up and down a little bit. Princeton, a slower team, your traditional, I don't want to say it's the Princeton offense because I don't even know if they run the Princeton offense anymore, but they are a traditional.
They just run offense. Like their offense, they say we just run offense.
Yeah, they're a traditionally slow Ivy League team. They're one of the, I want to say, like 15 or 20 slowest teams in the country. So that worries me a little bit, but I think I do agree with you that I slide toward the over here, and I will probably play the over in this game. Let's move on to the next game, 12:40, Virginia versus UNC Wilmington. Virginia is -8.5 here. What do you think?
So, again, just like Notre Dame Princeton, the over-under on this is 134. And I think if Vegas is looking at both these games very similarly, Virginia's offense, we know, has been pretty poor all season. There's been games that they just literally could not score and were losing some games at home that you wouldn't expect them to do. But I think you were talking about this on a recent podcast. Kyle Guy is just, they're kind of just saying, screw it. We need someone to score, and he's the guy that can score. So they're kind of letting it rip. I think a lot like the Notre Dame Princeton game, this could go over as well because there could be a lot more shots in this game than we've seen from them and both these teams during the regular season. I know a lot of people like UNC Wilmington. I don't know if they can cover the 8.5 based on how they play, so I would stay away from the line. But again, just like Notre Dame, I would take the over 134.
Yeah, I'm going to stay away from the over-under in this game, I think. It's a little bit scary to me because I just don't know what Virginia is going to show up. I agree with you that they've been a little bit better offensively since Kyle Guy got into the lineup. But what I do like here is I do like UNC Wilmington plus the points, and I'll probably even put a little bit of money on them money line.
Yeah.
I'm looking up at what that is right now. Their money line is, geez, there's so many NIT games, and it's terrible. Their money line is plus 263. I will probably put a little bit of money on that. But the thing I like about UNC Wilmington, the thing I like about UNC Wilmington here is I like the fact that they are considerably more athletic than Virginia, in my opinion. You just look at the guys that they have.
Absolutely are.
Yeah, and that scares me a little bit from an over-under perspective, but it especially scares me in terms of Virginia being what it now looks like -7. This line has moved down to. Mm-hmm. But I just look at a team that's more athletic. The tempo is obviously going to play the biggest role in this game, right? UNC Wilmington wants to get out in transition, get easy buckets, get steals. Virginia wants to slow it down. So here's my thing. If UNC Wilmington dictates tempo in this game, they're probably going to win, and you're fine there. If Virginia dictates tempo in this game, I think it's going to be kind of tough for them to win by 7 points. So I like the fact,
and we've seen Virginia. It seems like no matter who they play, they're able to play it place. I mean, even when they're playing like UNC in the ACC, the game is slow. So I would lean towards Virginia being able to play at the pace that they want in this game, especially against a one-bid team or one-bid league team.
Yeah, I think that I do too. I'm going to take UNC Wilmington here and be pretty happy with it. Let's move on to 1:30 on Thursday. Butler versus Winthrop. Butler is -11 here. What is your thought on this?
I mean, it seems like a lot of points, but what does Winthrop really do well? I know people are starting to think that they could incite an upset here. So for me, I would stay away from this game. I'd probably kind of defer to you on this because I think that you like Winthrop, and I'm not big on Butler, but I just don't see anything from Winthrop that really sticks out. But 11 does seem like a lot.
Yeah, to me, 11 is a lot of points. I'll probably put a small amount of money on Winthrop here. I like Keon Johnson a lot. I don't know who is going to stay in front of Keon Johnson. Kamar Baldwin's a nice defender, but he's a freshman, and I don't know if you want to throw a freshman to the wolves like Keon Johnson, and then your other option is either Keithan Savage or Tyler Lewis, and Tyler Lewis definitely isn't defending Keon Johnson well. So I like that matchup. I like the fact that Winthrop has a guy in Xavier Cooks with some size who can defend Keelan Martin. So I'm probably going to put a small amount on Winthrop, nothing crazy. The total in this game is 145. I will probably stay away from that total, to be honest. If you look at KenPom right now, they have it at exactly 145 as projection. So I'm going to stay away from that. I might put a small amount of money on Winthrop.
Yeah, I don't know enough about Winthrop to even want to put money on this, and Butler just – a lot of people like Butler, but I'm not a huge fan of them, so I would stay away from this one.
Yeah. 2:45 on Thursday, West Virginia against Bucknell. West Virginia is minus 14 as far as what it opened at, and it is now looking through. Why can't I find it? I really should have had these up and ready. It's still minus 14, so no movement on the line. What do you think?
I just think, again, 14 is a lot, but how the hell is Bucknell going to be ready for this type of defense after playing the Patriot League? I just feel like West Virginia is going to speed them up and make them freak out, and the points could come quickly off the turnover. So I actually lean West Virginia here. I don't really like them big picture in the tournament, but I think this is a matchup where they can just intimidate the hell out of Bucknell and get a big victory.
Yeah, you look at how West Virginia has built up. It's like number 5 overall KenPom rating. A lot of it was in the non-conference season where, they beat a middle of the road New Hampshire team by 59 points. They beat Manhattan by 47. They beat I'm trying to find just the solid ones. A Northern Kentucky team that's in the NCAA tournament by 31. West Virginia is a team that puts it on you if you can't handle their press. And I wonder if Bucknell's guards are going to be ready to handle this press. It's not an easy matchup. Bucknell, they are more of a front court based team with Zach Thomas and Nana Folland. I just can't see them dealing super, super well, especially whenever they start 2 guards that are freshmen and sophomores. They haven't seen anything like this. I'm probably going to go with West Virginia here.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's move on to 3:10. By the way, all of these game times are Eastern time. Florida will face off against East Tennessee State. Florida is minus 10 to open. This line, I would imagine no, it's not. It's about the same. It's still 10. What is your thought on East Tennessee State versus Florida?
I think East Tennessee State can keep this close. I initially had them pegged as a team that could absolutely win a game to open this tournament. Florida's not the best matchup for them, but they are a top 40 defensive team. They shoot the ball really well. I think they're able to keep this close. Again, they play fast. I would imagine that, Florida, being the team out of the SEC, will be able to control the pace. So I think it'll be slower. I like the under, and I like East Tennessee State to cover and maybe even win. Yeah,
this over-under is 147.5. That is a actually pretty decent sized number for an NCAA tournament game. And it is because of East Tennessee State. East Tennessee State likes to get up and run. Florida does like to get out in transition as well. I'm probably going to take East Tennessee State here, to be honest, and just take the points, but I don't feel great about it either. I will put a small amount of money on East Tennessee State to cover with the points, but I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that I trust in Steve Forbes. I think he's a great coach, and he's a great dude in general. So I will probably just be riding with my heart and hoping that Steve Forbes wins this game.
Yeah, I think they can keep it to single digits. I mean, I've never really been too inspired by Florida's play this year. And I think some of the metrics from East Tennessee State sticks out where I think they can keep this close enough.
Yeah, I know that Florida is coming in losing 3 of 4 in this thing, but I mean, 2 of those games are a bad matchup against Vanderbilt. They beat Arkansas within this time, and one of them is to Kentucky, obviously. So I'm not super worried about that. I get that they don't have John Egbunu, their big center, who kind of really helped them defensively inside. I don't know. This is a tough game for me. Like I said, I'm probably going to put a small amount on East Tennessee State, but nothing crazy. All right, let's move on to 4 o'clock Eastern. Minnesota against Middle Tennessee. This opened at Minnesota -1. I believe that has moved down to at least a pick'em since I saw, and it's actually Middle Tennessee -1 now. What are you thinking about this game? Do you think that the public is a little bit too strong on Middle Tennessee?
No, I mean, they're going to win this game, right? I mean, isn't this the classic 5-12 matchup, and you just have to forego this line? If you're going to get a point one way or another, I mean, what difference does that really make? Mm-hmm. Just take Middle Tennessee State to win this game. I think that's really what's going to happen.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Minnesota's defense.
I mean, I have them in the Sweet 16. I think that they're the team that can actually advance to the second weekend of the tournament with a 12 next to their name right now.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I do have them in the Sweet 16. I am a little bit worried about the public love, and I'm a little bit worried about like the nobody believes in us angle from Minnesota, because this Minnesota team is a really, really good defensive team. Like they can just like kind of shut them down if they really come and play. Like if they can find a way to keep Reggie Lynch out of foul trouble, that's a tough matchup for Middle Tennessee, I think. But I'm going to go with Middle Tennessee here as well. I think that the key matchup here is Reggie Upshaw against Jordan Murphy. Jordan Murphy's kind of an undersized, big body center. Reggie Upshaw is this beast athlete that I think is going to really do his thing against this Minnesota front line. So I'm going to go with Middle Tennessee here as well, I think.
Yeah, I mean, look, in Ken Palm right now, they're in the top 45-ish in defense, tempo, and effective field goal percentage. And when I crunched numbers and looked at previous tournaments, those are kind of the three main stats, especially defense, where double-digit seeded teams need to be at. They need to be ranked well in those areas to pull off an upset. And they are in the best among all these double-digit seeded teams this year. So I just think that coupled with Minnesota's lack of real experience, and I do like Minnesota this year as well. I mean, I think Rich Pitino's done a great job with that team. I just think that, yes, the world is latching onto Middle Tennessee State a little too much for people like you and me to want to stick with that pick, but I just don't see anything that tells me not to pick Middle Tennessee State right now.
All right, starting at 4:30, Northwestern against Vanderbilt. This thing opened at -1 for Vanderbilt. It is still there. What are your thoughts on this one?
I would stay away from this game personally. I don't see anything that really jumps out on either team other than the fact from the storyline angle where Northwestern's making the tournament for the first time.
Yeah.
I would, if I had to make a pick, I would probably say Vanderbilt, just based on the way they shoot. They do something really well. And they have a 7-footer that can do it, but I would stay away from this one.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm staying away from this too. Let's move on to 6:50, Maryland against Xavier. Maryland opened at -2. It has since moved down to -1.5. I think the Xavier team has been pretty bad all year, to be honest. Like, I think they were sneaky overrated the entire year.
I couldn't agree more. I actually went to Xavier, and I've been saying that since the beginning of the season. And then when you lose Sumner, it makes it even worse. I like what they actually did in the Big East tournament. I thought they looked decent. They did enough to get into the tournament. They deserve to be here, but just barely. I would stay away only because Xavier has a tendency to win games in the tournament that they're not supposed to win. You know, they've been on the other side of this, and then Maryland's just inconsistent. I would probably say that Maryland wins this game just because they had the best player on the floor, Melo Trimble. But the inconsistency of both these teams, I'm not loving it right now.
Yeah, there's kind of like two differing sides to this game where Xavier is the more experienced team. Maryland has 3 freshmen at starting lineup who play their most minutes. Xavier has really 4 or 5 upperclassmen that play significant minutes, including Rashid Gaston and Sean O'Mara. I know, though, that they have the freshman point guard. So, do you trust Melo Trimble's experience versus the freshman point guard? Do you trust the experience throughout the lineup versus Xavier against the inexperience of Maryland playing its first NCAA tournament? This is definitely a stay away for me.
It's a stay away, but I would say that Xavier's perimeter D sucks. They have let guards do whatever they want to do for most of the season, and then we don't have Sumner, your most athletic player, out there. I think Trimble is going to have a big game. I would lean towards that. But, again, neither of these teams have been very good all year, so I would stay away from it.
All right, let's move on. 7:20 East time, St. Mary's against VCU. This opened at St. Mary's -4.5. It has since moved to St. Mary's -4. What are your thoughts on this one?
So I personally hate St. Mary's. I think they are a bore to watch. I saw it in person against Gonzaga, that game day game, that primetime game. They were down 10, 12 points with a few minutes left, and they were still milking the clock trying to get a good shot. They don't even have a play, a quick hitting play in those situations, and I just don't like watching them. So it's kind of a jaded view. I don't even know if I should be touching this game because a lot of people seem to like them. But I personally would just vote. I would just take VCU because I don't like how St. Mary's plays, and I think that they've been overrated and they don't have any athleticism to keep up with VCU.
So, yeah, that's kind of the question here. Is it going to be a situation where, if you look at St. Mary's losses this season, the teams that have beaten St. Mary's, Gonzaga and UT Arlington, have always had a really tough physical post defender to make Jacques Lawndale, the big center at St. Mary's, who's had a tremendous year, struggle. If you can shut down Jacques Lawndale, you can really make their offense go to pieces. I don't think VCU has that guy. You look at the two guys they're probably going to throw on him. Ahmed Hamdi and Mo Ali Cox, I would imagine, will get the brunt of the assignment. Maybe a little bit of Justin Tillman, but I would imagine it's going to be those two. I don't think either of those two have the size to deal with him. He's just 7 feet tall, and Hamdi isn't all that great defensively, and Mo Ali Cox is 6'7", even though he's a physical beast. He's 6'7", so I don't know if they can shut him down, and if you can't shut him down, it kind of just puts St. Mary's into their offense. But the athleticism does scare me a little bit, the fact that, do I think VCU can slow down, or do I think St. Mary's can slow down VCU on offense? And what it comes down to for me is I trust Joe Rayhan to take this matchup against Jaquan Lewis. Rayhan was the WCC Defensive Player of the Year, and I trust him to beat Jaquan Lewis in his matchup, but I will probably put a small amount of money on St. Mary's because I just really like St. Mary's. I like the coaching staff up there, and you can see how I end up losing money in these games, right? I know the coaching staff up there, and I really want them to win, but it's not going to be a lot of money, and I think that if I was giving advice, I'd probably say to stay away.
Yeah, I think we're both in the same boat that we're kind of looking at this game with the wrong through the wrong lens, and so we should probably just not bet on it. Yeah,
what I will say is the over-under in this game is 130. I think that this game is going to go over because, like I said, I don't know who stops who in this game because
right, that's true.
Yeah. Like I said, they're just VCU's so much more athletic. St. Mary's is just going to have a size advantage inside, and they're going to be able to get the inside out going really well. So I probably will take the over in this game, and I might just do St. Mary's and the over in a small parlay or something. But we'll see what happens.
I could sign off on that. That's not a bad idea.
All right, 7:27, Purdue versus Vermont. This line opened at Purdue minus 8.5. It has since moved to Purdue minus 9 points. What are your thoughts on this? It seems like two similar teams with one team having a distinct advantage.
I like Purdue. When I say that I hate St. Mary's, I actually like Purdue, and I'm probably in the minority on that. I think that the way that they can play, where they can dump it into Swan again, and if you're going to double him, you got 3-point shooters open, is a good game plan. And I wish that they would take advantage of that more. I think Vermont actually has the size and plays decent enough defense where they can probably slow Swanigan down enough and maybe even guard him man-to-man and not have to double him so much. But at the same time, I don't know. I think I would lean Purdue here. I think that they're going to be okay in this game. I know a lot of people are thinking Vermont. Vermont does have the nice metrics. I hate the Big Ten this year. I feel like I got to show some love to them. So I would take Purdue.
Yeah, I'm going to stay away from this game. I'm not a big Purdue fan here, and I don't. But I do think they have an awesome matchup on Vermont just because, like you said, Vermont, to me, or like I said, Vermont seems like a smaller, less skilled version of Purdue to me in a lot of ways.
Yeah, they are. They're similar teams. Yeah.
Yeah, and whenever that's the case, I just think that Biggie Swanigan's just going to go wild, and it's going to be a problem for Vermont, even though they have the size to deal with them. A lot of mid-majors don't really have that size, but I'm going to stay away from this and just kind of do other things while that game is on. Probably watch St. Mary's VCU. 9:20, Florida State versus Florida Gulf Coast. Florida State is minus 12 here. What do you think of this game?
At first, Florida State's such an enigma. I don't know what to make of them still. I mean, we've been watching basketball for 5 months now. I still don't understand what's going to happen to this team night in, night out. Mm-hmm. I think they'll win, but I think Florida Gulf Coast can at least cover 12. 12's a lot. I think they're going to be slow enough where they can keep it to single digits.
Yeah, this line is still at 12. There's been no movement. Yeah, like you said, Florida State's a real enigma to me. I do like that Florida Gulf Coast has athletes. And if you look at what Florida State has going for it, Florida State, for my money, is probably the most athletic team in all of college basketball.
I mean, talent-wise, they're in the top 10. I mean, they have real guys. Mm-hmm. And I even buy in on Leonard Hamilton as a coach. He's been around for a while. I'm surprised that this team didn't perform even better this year.
Yeah. I'm going to stay away just because I don't trust Florida State enough with a number as high as 12.
So you'll stay away. See, I think I would actually put some money on Florida Gulf Coast to cover this 12.
It's just one of those things where when Florida State gets going, they're so unstoppable. But when they
I know, yeah,
are a mess, they're a mess. So I don't know. I'm going to stay away. 9:40, Wisconsin versus Virginia Tech. Wisconsin is -5 in this game to open. It has since moved to -5.5 in favor of Wisconsin.
So we're up 1.5 points now in this game. Wow.
Just a half point.
I think half. Well, I think it opened at 4.
Really?
And again, the books can be different from book to book, but I think I saw it at 4 when it opened. So now it's at 5.5. I mean, that seems like everything's going in Wisconsin's favor. I was unimpressed with them this year, but I do think that they can cover this game. I think Virginia Tech's had a good year. Buzz Williams has already got the Hokies in the tournament, but I think that Wisconsin can cover that. I think they pull away late.
Yeah, I think that that's a very distinct possibility. I do like the athletes on Virginia Tech, even though they don't have Chris Clark, who has just been, he was ridiculous throughout the first 20 or so games this year. But the key for Virginia Tech is they're going to be a pretty variant team in this NCAA tournament, in my opinion, because if they get the 3-point shot going, they are 9th this year in 3-point percentage. They're shooting 40.3%. They take a ton of them. This is a team that can really get going from outside. And if they get going from outside, Wisconsin runs that pack line defense defensively, which is horrible English, good God, on my part. But they run that pack line defense, which can be susceptible to 3-point shooting. So I'm going to stay away because I think Wisconsin's a more talented team, but I think that this is just going to be a variant outcome because of Wisconsin.
You have that unknown of Virginia Tech's going to take a lot of threes, and it's whether the ball goes in or not, and Wisconsin may not have a real way to counter that and limit what they take shot-wise. So that's a good point.
Yeah, I'm going to stay away. 9:55, Iowa State versus Nevada. For me, this is one of the two games I'm most looking forward to in the NCAA tournament this season. Iowa State opened at -6.5. It has since moved to 6. So we have a half-point line move in the favor of Nevada. What are your thoughts on this one? We have an over-under of 156, by the way, so expect a ton of points here.
And I almost want to take the over on that. I'm not sure I'll bite on it, but I think that there are going to be a lot of points in this game. I would stay away from this game. I would lean Iowa State. I love what they've been doing lately. I think that they are for real. But then a lot of people are talking about Nevada, who has athletes. They probably have pro players on that team as well. Mm-hmm. Their KenPom numbers don't really stick out to me, but I think from a personnel standpoint, they can keep it close with Iowa State. So I'm a little conflicted here. I'm going to pass.
Yeah, ultimate stay away game for me, except for the total. It'll probably be one of those situations where it's 7:00 out here. Maybe I've had a couple beers on Thursday night, and I will want to take an over. So I will take an over and bet on Iowa State and Wisconsin going over 156. But we'll see what happens there. We're going to move on to Friday now. Friday in the first round, Michigan versus Oklahoma State. Michigan -2 is what it opened at. We have since seen a move to -2.5 for the Wolverines. What are your thoughts on this game?
I don't think momentum is a real thing. I think Jawan Evans is. So I'm going to take Oklahoma State here.
Yeah,
I think that Michigan, it's a great story. Do not get me wrong, but we've seen countless years a team catch fire in the conference tournament only to lose in the first round. I think that's what Michigan is right now.
Yeah, I'm not taking this game in terms of points because I lost a lot of money on Michigan in the Big Ten tournament. But I am going to take the over here because the over is 153, and neither of these teams are going to be able to stop each other.
Yeah, no, they're both great offensive teams. I mean, I don't think a lot of people realize that Oklahoma State scores more points per possession than UCLA. And everyone talks about UCLA's offense, and Oklahoma State is actually a bit more efficient.
Yeah, it's almost like Brad Underwood's a genius or something. Yeah,
I think he is. I do like the over. I actually haven't even looked at that yet, but that sounds right, and I do think Oklahoma State, I would take them to cover the 2.5.
Yeah.
Therefore, they're going to probably win.
12:40, Baylor versus New Mexico State. Baylor minus 12 here. Where are you going with this? It has since moved to 12.5.
I'm going nowhere on this game. I know next to nothing about New Mexico State. I've lost money on Baylor this year, and they're not playing well, and it's during the middle of the day. I wouldn't touch this game at all.
So I probably am considering taking the points here. The only reason that I say that is because since February 11th, when they beat TCU 70-52, Baylor has not beaten anybody by more than 12 points. That is a thing worth mentioning. They like to slow the game down. New Mexico State is a interesting team, but they're not going to try and really get up and down the floor. So I would expect maybe a game high 60s here. The winner probably is in the high 60s, if you made me guess, which kind of puts you like right in the range of the over-under. Baylor has also struggled a little bit in the first round of the NCAA tournament recently, which is kind of insane to point out, but it also makes me wonder if they're really getting the right matchups here and really getting the right preparation going in these games against small teams. So I might put a small amount of money on New Mexico State, but what are you going to go with?
I'm going to pass, but I think you bring up a good point. We mentioned this a few times now, is that you got to look at the pace of these games. If you're looking at a double-digit line and the team or both teams want to play slow, you just got to think about possessions, and you got to lean towards taking the underdog just to at least cover, just based on the fact that possessions will be limited. And I think that's what you're doing here, it sounds like.
Right, and Baylor, they're a good team. They're a good story. If you look back through their early part of the season, they beat Florida Gulf Coast by 9. That's probably the most similar team here. But they also went out and beat Texas Southern by 26, another NCAA tournament team. Beat VCU by 8, beat Michigan State by 15. So I think 12 is pretty much exactly the number it should be. But I don't know, NCAA tournament nerves. I don't know. This is a bad idea. I probably will stay away now that you've kind of talked to me about it. I'm probably going to stay away. Friday, 1:30, Arkansas versus Seton Hall. Arkansas -1, so basically a toss-up. This thing has since not moved at all. The over-under is 147. What are your thoughts on this one?
I think I'm going to put some money on Seton Hall. I trust the Pirates this year. Again, last year, like we were saying, kind of like Michigan, this year, they win the Big East. Everyone's high on them. Then they have to travel out west, and they lose in the first round. I don't think they have to travel so much this year. I think Delgado can limit Kingsley. I'm looking at Seton Hall to win this game, so obviously they can get to cover the -1 or the +1.
Seton Hall gave me what I think is probably my worst beat of the NCAA tournament season, or the conference tournament season. I had 17 points to play with. I took them under in Marquette, Seton Hall on Thursday, March 9th. I had 17 points to play with 75 seconds left in the game. Seton Hall shoots 64% from the foul line on the season. Seton Hall makes 22 of 23 free throws in this game, especially coming down the stretch. They did not miss. And I go over by like 8 points. They scored like 25 points in the last 75 seconds. It was outrageous. I am still furious at Seton Hall for this, but I will be taking them.
Yeah, now you carry a bias. You're never going to bet on them again.
Well, I'm still taking them in this game. I'm still taking them.
Oh, you are? Okay, good.
Yeah, I like.
So you're
Seton
an adult.
Hall.
You're grown up.
I'm a little bit of an adult. I do adult things from time to time. No, I agree with you. I like Seton Hall in this game. I like their athleticism. Angel Delgado versus Moses Kingsley is the matchup to watch here. The two big guys inside. I just like Seton Hall more. I like their talent level more than I like Arkansas's talent level, and I think Kevin Willard is a better coach than Mike Anderson, to be honest. So,
I think this all leans towards the Pirates. I think we're in agreement there, and now that we're talking about it, I could see myself putting some real money on that game.
Yeah. SMU is going to face off Providence and Southern Cal. I don't know what these lines are going to be. I would imagine, I'm not even going to I would imagine SMU is probably favored by like 6 or so against both of these teams. What would you think? Which team would you think would have a better chance of beating SMU?
Well, I think Southern Cal. I just like how USC plays. I think they're pretty good. I think there's been a terrible East Coast bias this year. Living out in California and coming back here for the long weekend and meeting up with friends, there are guys that watch basketball that are telling me that Gonzaga shouldn't even get out of the second round.
It's crazy.
They don't even, what's going on with Oregon. Like, that team, there's no way that they can make it to the Elite Eight. And so I think that USC is actually better than a lot of people make them out to be. So I could see them winning tonight. And then, I'd say minus 4.5, 5 points would be that line against SMU on Friday.
Yeah, like living down here in LA, I swear to God, I think USC would have finished like 3rd in the Big Ten. Like, this team is so talented. Like, you look at just the pieces they have. I mean, they have 2 potential like late first-round picks in Chimezie Metu and DeAnthony Melton at some point. They have another potential draft pick in Elijah Stewart and Benny Boatwright. They have Jordan McLaughlin, who's their leading scorer and just like kind of a small point guard who scores a lot. But he's an interesting player nonetheless. And you look at Shaquan Aaron, Jonah Matthews, Rakosovic. Like, they have a lot of dudes on this team in terms of talent. Like, I genuinely think they would finish 3rd in the Big Ten.
Oh yeah, and I liked what I saw from them all year. Whereas Providence kind of was middling through most of the year, and they kind of turned it on recently. So I just think you got to look at the whole body of work, and USC is a better team. Yeah,
USC did beat SMU earlier this year.
They
in
did,
Southern Cal.
know, and I have SMU in the Final Four, which I know sounds crazy, but
I don't think so.
I'm going on a limb and making it happen. But then you're right. I saw that USC did beat them. Again, that was months ago, but yes, that does scare me a little bit. I still think SMU can win that game.
Yeah. In terms of this one, I will take SMU almost certainly if they play Providence. And against USC, it'll depend on the line, I think, to be honest.
Yeah.
Let's go forward to 4:30, Creighton versus Rhode Island. Creighton is minus 1.5. There's no way this line hasn't moved. Let me see. It's only moved a half point to Creighton minus 1 now. I would imagine there's going to be some big money late on Rhode Island in this one.
I got to think so, yeah. I mean, the Sharps usually place their bets late, so I could see that line changing a lot. Well, not a lot, maybe a point and a half. Starting tomorrow when that money comes in. I mean, I think Rhode Island's perimeter D is a huge problem for Creighton when they don't have Mo Watson. I like Creighton. I think it's a sad story. I thought that they could have been a Final Four contender this year based on how they were playing. This is a bad matchup for them. I think Rhode Island's playing well right now. I think that Rhode Island is not a Michigan where they just caught fire in their conference tournament. I think that they're actually coming together based on what the preseason expectations were. So I like Rhode Island to win this game, so I would put some money on them, and I will do that.
I will also be putting money on Rhode Island in this thing. Dayton versus Wichita State is at 7:10. We talked about this earlier on the podcast with Mike DeCourcy. He's going to be there in Indianapolis. We were both very excited for this game. Wichita State is minus 6 here. What do you think of that line, and which direction are you going to go?
This is just like Iowa State, Nevada. I can't wait to watch it, and I also can't wait to not put any money on it. Stay away.
I am actually going to go with Dayton here. I think that I can get enough value. I think these two teams, I don't think Wichita State is, like the 8th best team in the country. I think they're probably closer to like the 20th best team. I think Dayton's probably like a 25 to 30 team. So I'm probably going to ride with Dayton here, probably going to take the 5.5 points and roll with it. Because I think there's like a 40% chance they win this game.
Oh, I agree, and I haven't seen a money line number on this, but I bet you're going to get really good value for. Yeah, okay, so that's good value to take Dayton money line as well. I could throw a little money that way just to keep it interesting, but yeah, there's been so much talk about Wichita State, and now there's the contrarians coming out talking about Dayton. So now I'm caught in the middle, and I don't know what to do.
Yeah, like Archie Miller. I mean, the problem with like the whole like nobody believed in us mentality is like. Against Wichita State, there's no way they're not going to be ready for that game because Greg Marshall's a psycho. Like, there's just no way.
Right.
So I'm probably going to ride with Dayton. I'm not going to feel great about it, but I just will take the points and be okay because I like points. Cincinnati against Kansas State here. Let me see what this line opened at. I actually don't have it on our spreadsheet. It's at 3.5. Cincinnati is favored by 3.5 here at line of 130.5 in terms of the over-under. Do you like Cincinnati here? Do you like Kansas State? What do you think?
You know what? I didn't know that line until right now. I think I would take Cincinnati. I think that they are solid. I really want to see them play UCLA, to be honest with you. That's kind of why
I've been saying
that
all week.
Yeah. I like their defense, and it is true that they have guys that can actually score. So they're more balanced than they were in past years. Kansas State did look good last night, but again, they're playing Wake Forest, not Cincinnati. I would take those points for Cincinnati and look to them to advance.
I agree. I don't think that we're going to see a repeat performance from Kansas State's offense, especially against that Cincinnati defense. And I trust Cincinnati's offense a little bit more than Kansas State's offense as well, or Kansas State's defense especially as well. Let's move on to 9:20 on Friday, your second to last game that we're going to break down here. I believe your fourth to last game of the night. Miami versus Michigan State here. Miami is -2 to open. I believe that line has moved to 2.5. It has. Over under is 125.5. What are your thoughts on this one?
I think I would go Miami. I know that Tom Izzo, and it's a tournament, and I think I just saw something tweeted out that he hasn't lost 2 consecutive first-round games in the tournament either ever or in a long time. So, the odds are in his favor to win this game, but they're just so sloppy. Michigan State is super sloppy, and Miami's a good defensive team. I would lean Miami here, but I wouldn't be surprised if you're saying you're going to stay away from this.
I like Miami here, too, a little bit. The reason
you do? Okay.
Yeah, the reason I do is I just trust the athletes on
yeah, exactly.
On
on paper, I trust Miami a lot. So if you can take the Tom Izzo thing out of your head, it's a lot easier to go with Miami.
Well, it's that. Jim Larinaga, he's probably not Tom Izzo's equal, but he's pretty close. Like, he's an incredible coach. You look at the guard play here is where I think we're going to see the biggest difference. Like, who is Michigan State's best guard? I
don't know.
It's probably Cassius Winston, right?
I guess, but I wanted to say maybe Tum Tum coming in the beginning of the year, but he's not good. He's just a very unreliable player that's been on that team for too long and needs to get out of there.
Yeah. I'm going to go with Miami here. They have a bunch of good guards. Bruce Brown's a potential first-round pick. I think Davon Reed is an underrated draft prospect. Jaquan Newton is going to be able to get the job done here. I'm going to trust the guards. I'm going to trust Larinaga and go with Miami here. Last game that we are going to break down, South Carolina versus Marquette. South Carolina opened at 1.5 as far as being a favorite. It is now since moved down to -1. In favor of South Carolina. So where are you going here? This game is in Greenville, South Carolina, so I think it's probably worth mentioning that. What do you think of this game?
Marquette shoots a lot of threes, and they shoot them at a pretty good clip. I think they're tops in the country right now. South Carolina is a decent team. I look at Marquette a little bit ironically, Virginia Tech right now, Buzz Williams' former squad.
Right.
And the fact that they're going to take a lot of shots, it's a matter of if they go in or not. So there's a lot of variance involved. I would stay away. I would lean Marquette if I had to make a pick, though.
Yeah. I'm probably going to stay away here as well. South Carolina, I do like their guard play. I like the fact that they are going to likely stop you defensively in terms of 3-point defense. They're only giving up 29.6% on 3-pointers, and I know that every single study on 3-point defense says that you should be reducing the attempt numbers, and South Carolina also does that. Only 33% of opponents' attempts come from beyond the 3-point line. So I would probably ride with South Carolina here if I was going to pick someone, and if I need a late-night game, this might be the late-night game that I take. But Friday is also my girlfriend and I's anniversary, so I don't know if I am going to be allowed to watch basketball on Friday night. So
do you have plans yet, or are you just rolling with it?
So our plan is that Laura said that she would cook for our anniversary. We would have a night in. She kind of understands the situation a little bit, but I do have to, put away the computer, put away the TV, put away the phone, the iPad, my 16 screens that I will probably have going. I have to put them away at some point and spend some time with her.
Well, you're a good man, Sam. You're a good boyfriend. And you're also a very knowledgeable basketball guy, too. So you play both parts. It's great.
I try to... Go ahead.
You can miss South Carolina Marquette, and I think you'll be just fine with your girl.
Yeah, I think that is probably the case. I'm probably not going to be all that crazy disappointed if that happens. What are some of the futures that you like here? We wanted to talk about futures to finish this game up. What are some of the ones that you've seen that you like?
Yeah, quickly, I think future bets, and I've never really placed futures. I have before, but it's always something I look forward to every year because I feel like there's always a couple teams that are really favorites to win it all, and then I'm dissuaded from trying to find a value pick. But this year, there's no clear-cut favorite, and I think you can make a strong case for around, 6, 8, maybe even 10 teams to win it all. So, right now UCLA is plus 1,000. They're 10-1 to win the national title. And I think if you take the defensive conversation out of it, I think there's plenty of people out there that think that they can win it all. That's very good value to win the national title. Louisville, again, they're an enigma, but super talented. They're 18-1. So I just feel like there's numbers out there where people can jump on, whereas, 2 years ago when Kentucky was undefeated and I think they were 11-10 to win it all, why would you even try and put money on the numbers just didn't bear out. And I think right now you have a lot of options and you can make a strong case for some of these teams that are even higher than 5-6-1 to win it all. And then there's some real value in it.
Yeah, I'm checking out this list right now. You look at who the favorites are. Arizona, you can get at 8.5-1 or 8.75-1. You can get Duke at nearly 8-1. You can get Gonzaga at nearly 8-1. I'm trying to find more of a deep sleeper here, like a relatively high number.
Well, here's one. So, a month ago, I put futures bet on Oregon to win it all, and they were 12-1. And they lost Boucher. They're probably not going to win it all now, but I thought I had a real sneaky pick in them. They're 25-1 right now, and I love Dylan Brooks, and I still think that starting five is really solid. Boucher's not going to starter for them. 25-1 is a lot for a team that I think was in the national title conversation until Boucher went down.
Yeah, I'm looking at UCLA now. I can get UCLA at 13-1 even, which you mentioned.
Oh, wow.
You got
yeah,
10. Yeah.
These numbers really jump out at you. Florida State's 40-1. Again, talent-wise, they're up there. They're not consistent enough. There are numbers out there, and I think that there's no clear-cut favorite. So if you look past maybe that top line of 3 to 4 teams, there's still some teams out there that can get a nice return and have a real case to win the title.
Yeah, you can get. I have Cincinnati here at 85-1.
85. Now, I will say one thing, though. There's always that guy that would take a Cincinnati, right? And then they tell all their friends how cool they are when they advance to the Sweet 16, and they got that ticket in their hand. It's like, they're not going to win the tournament. I'm sorry. Congratulations for having that team advance to the second weekend of the tournament. But it's actually not going to happen that they're going to continue advancing. So I'm a little bit more realistic than that. But, when you look at odds to win the region, when I'm all on board with SMU to win the East, they're 8-1 to win the East. Arizona's not even the favorite to win the West. They're 2.5 or 225 to win the West. And I think a lot of people are picking them to win it all. So.
Underrated. Florida State's 6-1 to win the West. West Virginia's 6-1 to win the West. That's not bad value at all. Some of these regional ones aren't half bad now that I'm looking at it. As you can see, I did a lot of research on futures before this podcast.
It's fun to just kind of scroll through them. Normally, even just when you look at regional winners, it's usually teams that are not even going to give you a 1-to-1 odd to win that region, and there isn't a single team like that this year. So, North Carolina is the lowest. Go ahead.
Look at Iowa State here to win the Midwest at 10-1.
Right.
That's 4 games. They can go on a 4-game run pretty easily, I think.
They absolutely can. What do you think about those games being played in Kansas City, though? I still had Oregon winning that region, and then I realized that it was in Kansas City, and I feel like that's really tough. Kansas is very used to playing there, and they're going to have, even if they get to Louisville and they're in the Elite Eight, they're going to have a very pro-Kansas crowd there.
Where is the first set of games for Kansas?
For that region?
Yeah.
I think they're in Tulsa.
Okay. Because I kind of like Miami as like a sneaky upset against Kansas if they can get past Michigan State.
I don't know. That backcourt's too strong.
But
yeah, they're in Tulsa.
Yeah, that's tough. That's tough, Miami.
I mean, you're right. Miami has the right. They play the right way to not to incite that upset. I just think Kansas is just better.
Kansas is super good. All right, let's move on and get you out of here. I know that you have a potential plane to catch. We'll see if it ends up actually happening.
I'm starting to see snowflakes outside my hotel window in New York right now, so I don't know what's going on, but I've been in New York way too long. I got to get home where it's warmer.
Oh boy, is it even warm right now in San Francisco? Have you looked at the temperature?
It finally. I've been getting pictures from my girlfriend. It finally warmed up to. I think it hit 70 over the weekend after a lot of rain. It hasn't been the best. I'm a big golfer, and one of the reasons why I moved out there was because you can golf year-round, and I haven't really played much this new year because of the rain, but I think things are finally turning.
Yeah. Well, I'm rooting for you to get some golf time. Tell the people where they can find your work, what you've done recently at SB Nation. You do write relatively sparingly, but tell them where they can find your work when you do.
Yeah, so I'm in New York now. We did some great video stuff over at SB Nation Studios, previewing the tournament. We did a war room. We did a Sunday night selection show, a live show. And then I will be covering the regionals in San Jose. So I will be writing on those Sweet 16. Yeah, I'm very excited about that. So I'll be covering the regionals there. So you can find my work on sbnation.com for that. And, of course, on Twitter where I put out silly ideas and thoughts from time to time. Nick Fasulo is my handle. I have not even close to the amount of followers that you have, Sam, but I'm just as active in a voyeuristic way and time to time for tweeting. So,
well, you should absolutely change that, Twitter. People who are listening to this show, follow Nick over on Twitter. I seriously, he's one of the most underrated follows, I think, on the college basketball scene. He's one of my favorite people that I get enjoyment out of watching and listening to. I'm very glad that I had a chance to get him on the podcast. Maybe we'll do this again next week if we get some decent traction here on this podcast and get some decent traction on some of the plays we told people to do.
Absolutely, yeah. I think we got to get some wins first before I can be asked back on the show. I totally understand that, but I'd love to do it again if we're making people some money.
This has been the Game Theory Podcast. Remember to use those sponsors, MyBookie and SeatGeek. For MyBookie, you're going to use the promo code Theory. For SeatGeek, you're going to use the code Game Theory, all one word. Get out to some of these games. Use SeatGeek. Bet on some of these games like Nick and I just told you to using MyBookie. And like I said, follow me on Twitter at Sam_Vicini. On Wednesday, I released a new updated NBA Draft Big Board. On Thursday, I will have something about Jason Tatum's improvement since really, I guess, mid-February or so, and how he has kind of made the leap into what everyone thought he would be. So read that work. Like I said, go follow Nick. Please, for the love of God, go follow Nick. And until next time, we'll talk soon. Bye.